Hey guys, how's it going YouTube? Welcome to ReelBlue Custom Rods, first time going live. I've got a few things I'm setting up for you. I've got some aluminum foil, have some different color pigments that we're going to be using today. Got my epoxy mixed already, and then I have a blank already rotating. So what we're going to do is go ahead and set up the camera. Alright, so basically we're going to be making like this flame right here that you see in the middle. I'm going to show you guys how to make this this flame using some of your epoxy and your pigment. So I've already mixed some epoxy. I also have a piece of aluminum foil that I'm going to use down. I'm going to keep that off to the side so it doesn't mess up the picture. But basically what I'll do is I'm going to take a little bit of epoxy and I'm going to put it on this foil here. And that's going to do a couple different things for me. One, it's just a different surface where I can mix my pigments in to do stuff. And two, when you put your epoxy on something like foil or in those little foil cups that you can buy from, you know, mud hole or anything like that, what happens is when your epoxy sits on that foil, it helps reduce, it helps get rid of the bubbles. So again, I have a few colors that I'm working with, so bear with me. So the first thing, we're going to use two different types of pigment. I'm going to use a colored pigment or a liquid pigment. This one here is made by CRB, and it's this red color, so I'm going to use this one first, and that picture will clear up a little bit once I move that piece of foil. But you can see it's just liquid like paint. You do not need a lot of this. A little goes a long ways. So I'm just putting a little dab on my toothpick like that. Put it in this epoxy right here. And then I just start mixing it up. And then I'm going to let that set for a second. The next thing I want to do is I have two other pigments that I'm working with. I am using Nuno Paulino's pigments. This one is Bumblebee. And I will be using the same brand, but Clementine Pop. And so the first thing I want to do, these are powdered. All right, so you can see what the powder looks like on these. So these are powder. So again, I just take a toothpick. I put a little bit of the pigment on the toothpick, and then I just drop it into the epoxy and then mix it up. And I'll continue to mix that up here in a second. Again, it doesn't take a lot of either liquid or powdered pigment. I'm just mixing that up with my epoxy. All right, and then we're going to go ahead with the third color, which is the Bumblebee. Got a nice little metallic touch to it. Both of these do actually, the Bumblebee and the Clementine Pop. Again, just a little bit. And then I'll mix these up. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and move that off so that way out of the camera so we can see that one there. And then the next thing I'm going to mix up is I'm going to mix up a base. Again, it's another powdered epoxy. Let me go ahead and take this mixing stick out of here. And so I'm going to use this black pigment. Again, this is a powdered pigment by CRB. So I'm going to use this stuff here. Again, it's super easy to use. I just get a little bit of the pigment on my toothpick like that, and then drop it in there, and then that's it. Put the cap back on. So, you know, pigments are fairly inexpensive. They're pretty cheap, but they last a long time if you, unless you do a lot of pigment work, but they will last you a good bit of time. And so I think I'm going to put a little bit more of that black in here. Not getting the black that I want. or the darkness of the black that I want, excuse me. There we go. I'm just sticking that toothpick in there, mixing it up a little bit. And again, if you're joining me, thanks guys. I appreciate hanging out. This is the first time I've done YouTube Live. It's one of the goals I had for this year is I wanted to try something on live so I can interact with you guys and you guys can see some stuff as I'm doing it. All right, so I'm going to take that toothpick out, go back to my paintbrush here really quick. Now I'm just going to go ahead and mix that up a little bit more. All right, so now what I want to do is I'm going to identify a spot, and basically I'm going to do it right next to this one here. And so why black? Well, I basically want to lay down black, or you could use any color really, but I want to lay down black on top of this because the color of the blank just isn't dark enough for me. So I'm going to lay down a base coat of black epoxy or finish. And this is if you care on what type I use, it's Flex Coat finish, kind of my go-to finish, if you will. And if you guys like what I'm doing so far, go ahead, hit that like button, man. Let me know if you're getting something out of this video already. All right. And so I don't need a lot of this black on here. Hey, Michael, how's it going? What was your question? Was it low build? That were you asking about the finish? If you were asking about the finish, if it was a light build or a regular build, this is just, I'm using a regular heavy build because I want it to hold in place a little bit. You could use a light build. Light build tends to move around a little bit more. So there, I just have some black epoxy that I've added to it. Let me go ahead and clean this up. All right, and so I'm going to try to keep these colors here off to the side so it doesn't mess up what we're looking at on the camera. But the first thing I want to do is the first color I want to add is I want to add the red. And when I add it, I don't want to add it all the way down here at the bottom where this toothpick is pointing. I want to come up a little bit off to the side. And you guys will see why here in a minute. So the first thing I want to do, I'm going to go ahead and take just a little bit of this red on the toothpick. I'm going to start right about here. And then that's it. Voila. A little uneven, if you will, but that's it. I didn't put a lot on there. I just want a little bit. If I put a lot on there, this liquid stuff will tend to move around quite a bit. So next thing I want to do is I want to come back with the Clementine Pop from Nuno Polino. All right, so now we have the Clementine Pop on there. Then I'm going to come back with a little bit of this Bumblebee, this yellow. Grab a little bit more, just a little bit more right here. Okay. All right. So the next thing I'm going to do, I'm just going to let that sit for a minute. Hey, Brian, Avery, how's it going? Yes, your pigments are mixed with your finish, right? Again, I like to use Flex Coat High Build. If you missed that, you can see it in the beginning when when you replay it. But it's not a lot, Brian. It's just a little bit of pigment. And when I mean a little, here I'll just give you another example. Let me pick a color that you'll be able to see here. I'll go with this Clementine Pop. So, all right. So Brian, this is a Clementine Pop. From Nuno Polino Pigments. These are great marbling pigments. So what I'm talking about, just a little bit, right? You know, it all depends on how much you're going to make, but when I only have a little bit of finish set off to the side, I mean, I'm only taking like that much pigment off on a toothpick and then just dropping it in and then mixing it up. If that helps, Brian, go ahead and hit the like button, man. Let me know that you got that. All right, so what I like to do is I like to just let this spin around for a couple minutes and just let it set. And I'm not trying to hold you hostage. What I like to do is just let it spin, level out a little bit, do its thing, and then I'm going to come back. Yep, no worries, Brian. Glad you got it, man. And so you can use, I like to use dental picks like this sometimes, or you can just come back with a regular toothpick. So this is just about being creative. And I'm telling you, if you're in the habit or if you're in the business of wanting to make custom rods, you know, one of the ways of making every custom rod you built unique in its own way, one of the ways to do that, man, is really with pigments. Why do I say that? Because I don't care how good you are with pigments, it will never come out exactly the same every time, if that makes sense to you guys, right? So if you use the same colors and let's say you make 5 fishing rods with this flame on here like this one right here, and you do it the same way every time, just the nature of the pigments you're working with the finish, it will always be different. It could be similar, but they'll always be different. And that helps you make a very unique product, you know, a one-of-a-kind product for somebody that you're making that rod for. All right, so this has been spinning around for a little bit. So I'm going to go ahead and take this dental pick here. And now I'm going to start down here at the bottom where the black is at. Now the reason why I left a little bit of black here before I laid down the red, the Clementine Pop, and the Bumblebee Yellow is because if you look at flames, flames don't start off red at the bottom, right? There's a lot of different colors that come up from the bottom depending on where you're looking at them. And so if by skipping and leaving a little bit of black down here, I'll help introduce that black into this red portion of the flame. All right, so here we go. So I just start down here. And then all you got to do is just whatever design you like for flames. And I try to string it all the way out. Now, I'm going to keep going with this one first. So I was thinking about switching over to the toothpick to help me move a little bit more of the pigment, the colored pigments, but I think I'm just going to stay with this really quick. And so I think the trick is you go as far or as short as you want to when you're blending your colors, right? And the reason why I say that, the farther you go, the more you're going to extend or get these like tapered trails of the top of the flame on how it comes up. If that makes sense to you guys and you haven't hit the like button, go ahead and hit the like button for me. And that way I know that you're getting something out of this and I'm providing you some valuable information here. And so I just continue to use my dental pick. I'm just mixing those colors. Okay, so now what I want to do, I'm going to come back with a toothpick, and that's just going to help me move a little bit more of these colors from the bottom up towards the top, so I can carry the red, orange, and yellow further to the top. And then I'll come back, you see me, so I'll make a swipe. So here, like I clean off my toothpick. So my toothpick is clean. So I'll make a swipe. And then when I come back and look at the toothpick, see there's a little bit of black on there or a little bit of the colored pigment. I want to take that off. So I kind of come back and start with a clean one. And just by, so this is where I was using the pick. So you can see where I introduced a toothpick at, I'm getting more color moving towards the top of this pigment work. I'm just trying to look for a spot where I want to come in and introduce the toothpick. Oh, that looks good right there. Now you could, if you want, you could come back and maybe take a little bit of pigment and drop some stuff up here at the top. Like I'll take a little bit of this clementine pop on here. You know, if I wanted to, I could come up there, make a little drop, you know, and then you can just kind of tail that down or up a little bit if you like. I just like moving. Now this time I'm going to try to come all the way through. There you go, that clementine pop one. Now I'm just going to let that rotate for a little bit. And so now you can see that you just have, basically you've created a flame color, right? All right. So like I said, this one here is dry. I did this one earlier, and then what will happen is this one will, of course, level out a little bit and dry out and basically look the same. You know, you may notice like there's a little bit more red in this dry version than there is in this one, and so it's a little more red at the bottom. How did I do that? If you like that idea, right? Like how did you get to having that much red at the bottom? I used a little bit more. I went a little bit heavier on the red. In my personal opinion, liquid pigment like the liquid CRB products, they're great products. Again, like I was answering Brian's question earlier, it's just a little bit of pigment. But when you mix, from my personal opinion, when you mix liquid pigment with your finish, right, it is much more easier to move it around, and it'll flow a lot easier on your epoxy during your epoxy work and your pigment work versus using a powdered pigment. That just may be something that I think, but I do believe that that is a true statement. So you can see how this flame is coming out, right? And you can see there's a couple bubbles in there. So there's some things I can do, right? So how do I mitigate the bubble issue? Right, so how we mitigate bubble issues is with our alcohol torch, right? And so I never use butane lighters. I know a lot of people do. They'll take a lighter and they'll light it, and then they'll put it under their epoxy work. I don't do that. Butane burns differently than your denatured alcohol for your alcohol torch does. Denatured alcohol burns cleaner. Butane, when you use butane heat on your epoxy work or your pigment epoxy work, it could actually create a haze inside of your epoxy. But anytime you add, as you guys know, anytime you add heat to your finish, that finish is going to move, right? So it does a couple of things. Heat helps our finish move around quicker because it becomes thinner and it levels out easier. And it also helps us remove bubbles. But if I apply a lot of heat to this flame, it will look like just a blob of different colors, and you really won't be able to make out the flame. But if I add just a tiny bit, so I lit my torch, all right? So if I add just a tiny bit of heat to take out any of those bubbles, I'll be okay. Like right there, that's it. And that really wasn't, you know, that wasn't much of me waving the alcohol torch around, right? So real quick, let's see what that looks like. All right, so this one on the left is the one that we just did just now. And then the one on the right is the one that I did earlier, just so you could see what a dried one would look like, right? And then again, as I mentioned, you know, I had more red epoxy in this one on the right, and that's how I got that really, you know, red look at the bottom where it kind of flows. And then over here on this one that we just did today, I used a little bit less of the red colored epoxy. So yeah, let me know what you guys think. If you guys like that, and you got something out of that video, go ahead and hit the like button for me. And again, you know, if you just joined or if you've been with me the whole time, hey, I appreciate you guys joining my first ever live YouTube session. Let me know down in the comments if you like when I do live stuff, if you got some value out of this, if you want me to continue to do live videos in the future. So, hey, again, thanks for supporting ReelBlue Custom Rods and for supporting me and my channel. And until next time, take care, guys. Bye.